Welcome to another entry in my podcast series, Ideologies versus Literature. This is entry 26. Today we're going to be focusing on the book, The 57th Bus. For those of you just tuning into my podcast, I'm John Smith, and this podcast is about interviewing different people of different ideologies from different places all over the world, specifically on literature. Later in the podcast, I'm going to interview a special guest from the state of Texas. I'll introduce him later, but before that, for a little introduction about the book for those who haven't read it yet. I'm just going to read the blurb. The 57th Bus is a riveting non-fiction book for teens about race, class, gender, crime, and punishment. It tells a true story of an agender teenager who is set on fire by another teenager while riding the school bus in Oakland, California. One teenager with a skirt, one teenager with a lighter. So yeah, it's a very interesting book, and I highly recommend that you read it. If you haven't read it already, stop listening to my podcast. You can always catch it later on Audible or Spotify. The author's really skilled, and I really enjoyed reading this book. I highly recommend that you read it. Now, before I introduce our guest for tonight, I'm going to talk about our sponsor, Selwyn College. They're a school of arts that lives in one of the neighboring states to me, and they lend me a majority of the books that I read for these interviews. So without their help, I wouldn't be able to make these podcasts for you guys. I feel it's necessary for our guest today to introduce themselves.